Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Testimony Thursdays. I'm your host, Dr. Jas. I have a very special guest with me today, and we have so much to talk about. So, we are going to go ahead and get started. And this guest, she is just amazing. She's doing a lot for the community and a lot to support people who are going through some tough times in their life. So, let me go ahead and start with the scripture that came to mind when I thought about this young lady. So this is from Matthew 5, verse 4. It said, God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. And once we hop into the episode, y'all will understand why this verse is just so important. And it really represents Ashley and everything that she is doing. So our guest today is future Dr. Ashley Baylor. And I cannot wait to get into, her journey of becoming a physical therapist, the Baylor Project, and everything she is doing to support the community and help people in need. So yes, Ashley, I'm just going to have you briefly introduce yourself and then we'll go into an icebreaker.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Jas, for having me today. I'm elated to be here and to talk with you all today. As she said, my name is Ashley Baylor. I am a native of Los Angeles, California, and I started the Baylor Strong Project a little over a year ago, and we have been trucking along. We have been taking care of caregivers and ministering to them and making sure they have the resources they need.
Honestly, I did not know you were a native of LA. So you're there currently.
I'm in Houston currently, actually. I just moved here last August.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. I was like, I have a trip coming up in LA. So that's okay. Okay. So we're gonna hop into the icebreaker. I do have a couple questions because now that you say LA and Houston, are you a Beyonce fan?
I used to be.
You used to be. Okay, I'll take that. So with your journey, like becoming a physical therapist, are you currently taking like classes or where are you at next up?
I am post-bac. So I have a biology and a kinesiology degree.
Mhm.
I'm also a certified massage therapist. And so I am kind of coasting actually right now and just enjoying my journey of entrepreneurship.
Good. Okay, so so you'll understand these icebreakers then. I saw like this game going on around TikTok, and it said if you could name your child any name after a muscle, what name would you do?
Sartorius.
Yeah, that's mine too. I was like Sartorius or Gracilis. Because I feel like that's like I could see that being like a real name, like
Yes.
appropriate name. So yeah, I thought that was fun. And then what type of learner are you? Do you like to handwrite things or are you you like to type on a computer?
I'm actually a kinesthetic learner. I
Okay.
need all of the learning styles incorporated in order for me to fully grasp something. So I'm definitely hands-on mostly. I'm a visual learner mostly, but sometimes I need a combination of writing and audio to really bring everything together for me, make it stick.
Yes. I'm the same way. Like I really have to do a lot of movement. Like even with the muscles, like learning anatomy, when I had to go through cadaver lab, all of those things. So like even when I teach other like patients that I work with, like currently I do home health full time and with the geriatric patient population. And just a couple weeks ago, I was telling this patient about his piriformis and how it was super tight. Like he just had a muscle knot and he was like, it's so painful. And every time like I did a stretch for it, he's like, oh my gosh, that feels so much better. And I was like, your piriformis muscle is tight. And he said, my what? And I'm like, wow, people really don't know like the muscles that are in their body, the organs that are in their body, any of those things. So I pulled up a picture and he was in like it was pushing on his sciatic nerve and it was like pain shooting right down his leg. Like it was like the textbook presentation. And he was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. And then I will see, I'll check up on him in a couple of weeks, but I feel like now he'll be more compliant with his home exercise program because he understands it now of what's going on. So yeah, I'm that type of learner. And we have to, realize what type of learners our patients are, caregivers are, all of those things, because that is how, we can help them in the best way. So yes. Now, Ashley, can you talk about the Baylor Project and just give us some more information about that?
Yes. So the Baylor Strong Project was inspired by my dad. He was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in 2019, and it rocked my world for a lot of reasons. Me and my dad were really close. My dad was also my pastor, so it rocked our congregation's world, and we had to transition quickly. When my dad was diagnosed, he was in late stage, he was stage 4, and the doctors essentially told him, like, if you didn't come in when you did, you would have been dead. So my dad ended up living a lot longer than anticipated. He lived a little over a year on treatment, which really was a miracle because of my dad's late stage diagnosis, and it had already spread. So he was classified as stage 4 pancreatic cancer with METs, which means metastatic for those who don't know. And it went to his liver and to his spleen. He ended up passing April 5th of 2020. So it's already been 5 years. And I remember like some months after he passed, I was just like, I can't just sit here. I have to be involved with the pancreatic cancer community in some way. So I actually reached out to one of my friends who's a physician. She's a surgeon currently working in women's health. And I know that she's always been very involved healthcare wise, especially for causes. And so I was like, she'd be the perfect person to be able to point me in the right direction. And she introduced me to a nonprofit organization that's based in New York, and they're called the Lusk Garden Foundation. So I started off as a fundraiser, bringing people together from my community to raise funds. And 2 years ago in 2023, I decided, based off of God's leadership, to turn Baylor Strong into a business. It was just a hashtag at first. So everything attached to our fundraising efforts, everyone will put hashtag Baylor Strong. And I would do things that were tied to like memories of my dad. So, I would have like during December, since that's when he was born, I would have everybody for 30 days share like words of wisdom that my dad shared into their life, poured into them. What were things you remember from his sermons? What sermon notes do you have? And to share that to inspire people, because that's really what Baylor Strong is about, is based on our faith in Christ, and me seeing my dad lean even more into that when he was battling cancer. So my dad really stood on the word of God, not in some, spiritually spooky way where he was just upbeat all the time. But I saw my dad literally bring his pain, his tears, the woundedness, from this experience. I saw him bring all of that before God and still trust God through the entire process. And that really ministered to me. So I hit rock bottom personally in my own life in 2023. And I was like, something's got to change. Like, I got to do something different. And I ended up linking up with my business coach, who at the time was my coach and helping me navigate PT school and the schools I wanted to go to and how to make myself a better candidate. And he was like, let me bring you over into the entrepreneur world. And so I was actually going to do something else. But a meeting we had, God spoke to me and he was like, this is what I've called you to. And he was like, this is what you're going to name it. So that's how the Baylor Strong Project came to be. And 6 months into business, I was like, hey, I feel like I should shift. And I was like, Lord, I need you to confirm it. And I was like, when I hop on a call with my business coach, confirm through him that this is the direction I need to go in. And it was the direction of focusing on the caregivers, because even with my science background and knowing what the patients need, he was like, personally what caregivers are going to need based off of what you didn't have. And that's the drive behind Baylor Strong. Is with pancreatic cancer, nobody talks about it. And at one point, it was rare. It's not rare. It hasn't been rare in at least 20 years. but no one's telling people that it hasn't been rare in 2 decades. It's very common now. It's literally getting pancreatic cancer is like getting breast cancer and prostate cancer at this point. So I was like, people need to know more about it. People need to know the symptoms. People need to know what's available. Even with me being in school while my dad was diagnosed, I didn't know anything. I did the research. I went on Google. I utilized the fact that I was in research classes and learning how to look up peer, reviewed articles. I did all the things. Everything I know 5 years in, I did not know having that background. I knew nothing. And most families know nothing. They don't know where to start. They don't know who to turn to. They don't know what questions to ask, what conversations they should be having. They don't know what support is available to them. A lot of families live in rural areas, and this, Dr. Jas, just being a PT, there are just some resources you don't have in certain regions. So what are you going to do to help them financially if they need to travel, which for pancreatic cancer, you need to be open to traveling, because the average oncologist is actually not specialized in pancreatic cancer care, because they may see one person with it. But major cancer centers that specialize in it, that's where people need to go. Hospitals that have surgeons and doctors who specialize in it, that's where they need to be going. But they're in certain places. So your local oncologist may not be the best person to take you the full journey if your goal is to beat it. So those are all the things that I bring to the table with the Baylor Strong Project, is making sure that people have the knowledge and resources at their fingertips instead of having to spend hours on Google trying to find whatever you can, trying to learn. We don't have that kind of time. Pancreatic cancer is extremely aggressive. And I've had families ask me, like, do you think chemo's worth it? I'm like, do you want extra time? This is not a cancer where you can solely depend on homeopathic ways. You need to be just as aggressive. Most families don't know that with the different type of chemos and the cocktails and the immunotherapies, doctors can lower the dosage. If it's impacting your loved one and make them have more symptoms, they can either change it to one that works better, or they can lower the dosage so it doesn't harm them as much. But again, who knows that? And because my dad was the kind of personality he was, he didn't want to burden us. So there was a lot he didn't allow us to, be a part of with his journey. And so I'm still learning things about my own dad's treatment journey, because he just didn't want us involved a lot so that it didn't burden us. He was trying to prepare. I think my dad knew he was going to transition. So he was more focused on trying to prepare us as a family and trying to prepare our church family for his absence. And so I was frustrated for a long time, because I'm like, we could have helped if you would have let us, I would have been able to be inspired by what questions to ask. And so I've put together guides and all of those types of things so that caregivers know, how do you navigate this thing emotionally when you first receive the diagnosis? What kind of questions should you be asking your loved one's oncologist? What's available, what's out there? And so that's what Baylor Strong is about.
Wow. Oh my goodness, Ashley. Thank you so much for sharing that. I have very limited knowledge of pancreatic cancer, so I'm learning a lot right now. And just shout out to your dad and how he was just obedient really to his calling. And, not only was he able to plant seeds, but he was also able to demonstrate his faith while he was going through this. So, now it's birthing a whole new transformation for other people who are receiving this diagnosis. And just this has become your ministry now. And it's like, that is so powerful. And for me, I always, when it comes to like caregiving and people who are diagnosed with tough conditions, I think about Tabitha Brown. I don't know if you know, okay, Tabitha Brown. So with her mom, she was diagnosed with ALS, and I feel like everybody, it should be mandatory to listen to Feeding the Soul by Tabitha Brown. It's a audiobook, and she just talks about, her journey with being a caregiver, the frustrations that she experienced, and also how her mom was a pastor too. And her mom, like towards the end of her life, being able to transition to the other side of glory, she asked her mom, like, hey, if you had the choice of having this disease, would you keep it or would you tell God, like, I don't want it? And she was like, no, like, this is what I was supposed to do in life. And I was just like blown away. So, oh my goodness, I have so many more questions now that you have shared that. And one of the things that I heard is that you became frustrated because you wanted to help, but your dad had a different idea. And my question it's kind of a long question. Okay, like the first part of it, how do you hold somebody accountable to their part in what they have to do to get healthy, to get stronger, or to even just live a happy, functional, healthy life while they're here? In the instance of, like how you said, like some people, oh, I'm not going to do chemo. And it's like, but there's other options. Like you don't have to do as much, or you can get a second opinion. Like how do you hold somebody accountable to doing that part? And then how do you like not, I don't even like how, like, I feel like for me, it's, you have to be gentle with people. You can't just say, you need to do this, because I'm like, what is the response that you want to get back from them? If somebody was telling me, like, hey, Jas, you need to do X, Y, and Z to be healthy, and they're yelling at me and being rude and mean, I'm not going to do it just off that. Like, if that's the response you want. So, how do you stay patient and how do you hold somebody accountable?
That's an excellent question. I love those. So, to answer your first question, you have to use what is valuable to them. What made it easy for the accountability with my dad is that he already had the mindset that the cancer was not his identity and that he wasn't going to be defeated by it, because my dad was an athlete. So everything in his mind was already a competition. He saw the cancer as like, oh, bet, let's go. I'm not about to let you beat me and take me out. I'm going to go out the way I want to go out. So accountability on my dad's end was easy because he just already had that innately built in, like we learned in school, that intrinsic motivation. He already had that involved. But for the average caregiver, where your loved one may instantly have fear and anxiety, and I don't doubt that my dad had that, but it just displays differently, right? But if your loved one just completely shuts down, they're like, I'm not trying to do a thing. You have to tap in with what they value. And then you have to tie the treatment into being able to accomplish that goal for them. So, if your loved one is like, I don't want to die, then you don't say, well, I don't want you to die either. Like, obviously, right? But you don't make it about you. You have to keep it tied into what they want. So, for example, my dad already had goals set when he went to see his oncologist. There were 3 things he wanted to do. He said, number 1, I need to be able to still preach. He was like, if I ain't gonna be able to still preach, then we're gonna figure something else out, because it can't stop me from doing that. He was like, I need to feel good by Sunday. And then the second thing was, I have 2 nieces. My youngest niece was in high school and she was approaching her senior year. He was like, and I want to be able to see her graduate from high school. And then the third thing was preparing us as his family along with our church family. He was like, I need to have time to find a pastor who's going to take care of the people God entrusted to me. So because he wanted to be able to accomplish those 3 things, he was willing to do whatever he needed to do to live long enough to get those things done. So you have to ask your loved one what their goals are. What do they value? And then say treatment is going to help you meet that. If that's what you want, this is the path that's going to best help you accomplish that and maintain those goals and values. And accountability for ourselves as the caregivers with, like you said, how do we remain patient and gentle is you have to first address your own emotions. When my dad told us that he had cancer, immediately I was like, oh my God, my dad's gonna die. Because that was all I knew about pancreatic cancer at the time. I knew people died from it. I had never met anyone that lived from it at that time. Now I know lots of survivors. So stay hopeful, people. But at that time, I was just like, what? I was like, pancreatic cancer, like that's the one you don't want. And you could have, if time could have stood still, that's what it felt like. It felt like I had entered into an alternate universe at that point. And I was just like, I cannot believe that my worst fears have now surfaced. So you have to address that as a caregiver, because a lot of the ways we approach our loved ones when we're caring from them is from places of anxiety, places of fear, places of worry. And then we get angry because once the word gets out, people have very interesting ways in which they deal with trauma and devastating news. So if you have siblings, you may have the type of siblings that are like, I got to completely check out and I got to disappear to survive this because I can't emotionally handle that, right? And so now you're angry because maybe you're the sibling that is used to always being on go and handling all the business. And maybe you have a type A personality. And so now you feel isolated and neglected. Now you don't have any help, right? When really that's not the case. It's just everybody's having their way of processing what's going on, but nobody's actually dealing with the reality. Me and my family didn't get that luxury because my dad was on us from jump. He was like, I ain't dead yet. He was like, so don't put me in the grave. So he was like, well, okay. And it's not that it wasn't hard. When I wasn't around my dad, I'd be breaking down while I was at school. I had severe panic attacks. My professors were pulling me into their offices, praying with me. Thank God for praying professors. I had a professor who sent me home because I felt an anxiety attack coming. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna make it through class. And she was like, go home and binge watch everything you love on Netflix. She was like, don't do any homework, nothing. So if you don't tackle how you feel in your quest to be strong, right? Because that's also the thing that I absolutely abhor about caregiving is people telling caregivers, well, you got to be strong for your loved one. What does that even mean? Be strong in what way? Caregivers are going through it with them. This is hard. What you should be telling them is, did you cry today? Maybe you need to cry it out. Let's talk about the stuff you can't admit to anybody else because they're going to shame you or judge you for it. Those are the things that need to be happening, because then you are able to be patient with your loved one while you're caring for them, because now you know where your drive for them to live is coming from. And we have to deal with the fact that diagnosed, he was a very independent man. He told me, he said, let me tell you when I need help. My independence is already left me. Don't take away what little I have left. Right? So it's the same thing when they're like, oh, I don't want to do treatment. Well, ask them why they don't want to do treatment. Are they already tired? Do they want to transition already? Are they like, look, I didn't live my life and I'm ready? Like, ask them questions so that you know how to hold their hand through the decision they want to make.
Yes, Ashley. That's right on it. Thank you so much for sharing that. And what I'm hearing is that a support system is needed. People in your life, prayer warriors are needed.
Yes.
grace is needed because even I reference back to Tabitha Brown when she talked about her mom and caring for her mom. Like she was in, I want to say she was in California and her mom was in North Carolina and her sister was there. And she's calling her sister, like, hey, how's mom doing today? And she's like, I didn't go there to see mom. And she's like, why didn't you go see her? Like, you're up the street. Like, I'm a plane ride away. So then you get frustrated with them, but it's like they might handle it differently than you handle it. So then having grace for people, listening to people. And, I always say this prayer of, God, prepare my heart for things that I might not be ready to hear. And then working as a physical therapist, prepare the patient for things that they might not be ready to hear. Like I might have some knowledge and I might say, hey, you need to go get a second opinion, or hey, this is not looking like a typical muscle strain. Like you may need to go get an x-ray, like prepare them as well because they might not be ready to hear that. So it's a balance, it's tough and it builds our character. And then once we go through something like that, like a testimony, our job really is to share it and be able to help other people. So that is just, oh my goodness. Thank you have dropped so many gems to being able to help other people get through this and realize that there is assistance available. And I do have one more question. I know we're about to wrap up soon, but if you could share with us some of the signs and symptoms that led your dad to go to the doctor and to get checked out, and what are some things that we can look out for in case we are having some symptoms of pancreatic cancer?
Absolutely. My dad dealt with vomiting frequently, high blood sugar levels, like coma status, and he dropped weight like 10 pounds, and he wasn't trying to drop that. And he couldn't put it back on. So that was what alarmed him, is like, okay, I'm eating, I'm doing all things, but I can't put the 10 pounds back on. So those things alerted him, like, okay, I might need to go in. And my dad was already a type 2 diabetic. So he was already going twice a year to get his regular checkups and seeing his PCP regularly. They were already running blood tests. And those things are supposed to catch it, but none of his blood work or any of the tests that they ran caught his cancer. It wasn't until his PCP was like, you know what, we need to run a CT scan and see what's going on, because your blood sugar levels are too high and you're not putting the weight back on. So they ran a CT scan, and that was what caught my dad's tumor. So, symptoms that I always urge everyone to look at, because it's more than just that, because where the tumor is located on the pancreas will determine more of what you experience. If you have severe abdominal and mid back pain, if you have changes in your stool, like if the coloring of your stool is really dark, if the coloring of your urine is really dark. When I say dark, I'm talking about Coca-Cola dark. If you are experiencing jaundice, vomiting and nausea, if you have a sudden onset of diabetes out of nowhere, things like that. And like I said, the drop in the weight, the vomiting and everything like that. If you are experiencing those symptoms, go to the doctor as soon as possible. If you experience pancreatitis, it doesn't mean you have pancreatic cancer, but it will put you at risk for it. You need to go to the doctor as soon as possible. The issue with symptoms of pancreatic cancer is that they typically do not present until late stages. Typically, you do have some people who've been fortunate enough to have them at like stage 2, stage 1B, where it is kind of early on. And so they were fortunate enough where they had symptoms early enough where the doctors could catch it soon enough. But the average person, they're not finding it until it's, stage 4, because the symptoms don't present in the early stages. And they do not have preventative screening tests yet. That's what researchers are working on and have been working on for the past decade, is a specific test to screen people for every single year. So it's not like when, we can go get our mammograms, or when you get a colonoscopy or the, prostate screening. PanCan is hard to diagnose because of where the pancreas is located.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know that. So, yes, thank you for sharing all of those tips and signs and symptoms. And just thank you for being obedient to what God has called you to do, because you are making an impact on people's lives and they need this. So, thank you so much, Ashley. And how we end every episode, we just talk about a test that we may be going through or a test that we went through that led to a testimony. So, if you could kind of just talk about that as well to wrap us up.
Absolutely. So obviously my dad passing was a huge test, but the real test was when God called me to leave LA last year. And he told me 2 years before that I would be going. I didn't know where I was going at the time, or what that meant, but 2 years before leaving, he told me that it was time for me to go. And that was all he gave me. But then last year is when he, finally told me where I would be going. And I initially thought like, oh, it's because, I'll be going for school. And he was like, no, you're going because I'm teaching you to trust me, because for so long, your dad's voice was louder than mine. He was like, you made his voice greater than mine. He said, now I'm teaching you how to just listen for me. What am I saying? No matter what it looks like to anybody else, what am I telling you to do? So something I would never do was pack up without nothing. But I was like, can I work first? Can I save? He was like, nope. He was like, you need to leave right now at this time, because if you don't, you're going to be stuck. And he was like, just trust me. He was like, don't take anything with you. So before leaving, I started cleaning out my closet, cleaning out my room. He was like, all you taking with you are clothes and shoes. I didn't know where I was going to stay when I got to Houston. I didn't have a job before getting to Houston. And it has been a whirlwind of God's grace and mercy since I've been here. It's been a lot of tears, but it's been a lot of character development and growth. He, put me at a church that is phenomenal. Cause I was like, Lord, now my daddy was my pastor for a long time. Where am I going? Is the doctrine going to be sound? What's the church community going to be like? And he put me at a phenomenal church where they teach sound doctrine. The community is great. I got, there was a job I was going to apply for, but then I decided not to. And he was like, put your resume in. I got that job without an interview. So, my testimony to anybody who's going to be tuning in is, when God tells you something, first check in and make sure it's actually him. Because I said, Lord, confirm what you're telling me with your words. So I know I ain't making this up, because sometimes we do that, and we slap God's name on it. So he did confirm. Genesis 12:1 was the confirmation passage. And he said, just as I led Abraham, I'm going to lead you. And so you have to trust what God is doing. It's not going to look like what you thought. It's not going to be a bed of roses. But he said, when I got here, he said, I am your shepherd. He said, and I'm not just leading, you're not the only sheep I'm leading in the valley. You have a whole flock of sheep with you that I'm leading in the valley. I'm in it with you. And I just need you to trust me. And it's been a beautiful journey ever since.
Ashley, I am blown away, girl. Oh my, thank you so much for sharing that. And, just being obedient and listening to God's voice. And that's a prayer that I also have, is that, because we're always hearing voices. We're hearing people, no, don't do that. That looks crazy. You can't move. No, 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 no. So I pray, God, make your voice the loudest voice. Like, and I think some people struggle too with hearing God's voice. And for me, like, I do fasting to make sure, like, before I make a big decision, I'm like, okay, let me fast so I don't have any distractions. And because my biggest distraction is food, honestly. So I have to fast from that. And then I'm like, okay, Lord, I heard you. And just being able to, like how you said, like asking for confirmation. and asking for signs and specific signs. And I always think about bringing it back biblically about when was it Isaac that was Abraham's servant that was going to find a wife
Yeah.
for his son,
Isaac, yeah.
Isaac. And then he was like, God, you know what? I need to find this wife by today. Whoever is out here, have them give me water, but also have them give my camels water as well. Then I'll know like that's a sign from you. So that's what I do too. I'm like, God, let me be very specific because I don't want to, misjudge. And also I don't want to slap your name on something where you like, Jas, I did not say that. So that is just, yeah, it's good. So for the people that are listening, definitely leaning on God, and God, he will guide you and lead your paths, and Proverbs 3, 5, 6. So that's really it. But Ashley, tell the people where they can find you, where they can follow you and get some of your resources.
You all can find me on Instagram at the Baylor Strong Project. You can also find me on LinkedIn at my name, Ashley L. Baylor, or you can follow me on Facebook. You can find me over there at soar.baylorstrong, or the Baylor Strong Project.
Well, thank you so much, Ashley. I appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time to just talk to Testimony Thursdays and just leave a beautiful testimony for us to self reflect and be inspired and motivated by. So, thank you all for joining and listening. This is another episode of Testimony Thursdays. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and we will see you all next week.